We're staying with that story. We're bringing in SABC News reporter Hasina Gori for more on this. Hasina, good afternoon. If you can hear me, perhaps from your vantage point, you could give us the latest. What is transpiring as we speak?
Good afternoon, Liesl. We're once again coming to you from Diepkloof in Soweto, outside of the forensic pathologic services, where we've been from the early hours of the morning, and where we've seen family members of those that have lost their loved ones coming in here to come and identify those charred bodies of those that have passed on. We know that the number stands at 74, and according to the Gauteng Health Department, they've said that a majority of those that have been deceased have been burnt beyond recognition. Most of them are unable to be identified by just their visual aids, and you wouldn't be able to identify them from their face. We have spoken to various family members who have been coming in and out of this facility from the morning. We also went to Hillbrow, and it's quite quiet right now, but we were explained that those that would have been burnt beyond recognition, they now have to go through a DNA process, and only family members would be tested for the DNA that has been done here inside this facility. And those that have been deceased, they're being tested at the Hillbrow facility and then brought here. We saw the pathology truck coming in a little while ago, transporting those bodies from Hillbrow to this forensic services, where the families will eventually be able to identify. Liesl, we just spoke to a woman just a little while ago, quite emotional. She is from northern KZN, and she lost 3 of her sisters in the fire. They were burnt, but they were one of the 12 that they were able to identify, through their facial features and bringing through their identity documentation. We know that other, departments have been also activated, including Home Affairs, to assist, as well as the police, who will be handling that specific DNA process that needs to happen right now. But also, this is quite an emotional process, quite a tragic incident that took place. Beyond the 74 that passed on, there have been almost 250 that were injured. There are also, many that now left this place. Given that that building was a hijacked building, given that it was a building that was illegally occupied, there's no exact number of how many people were actually living inside that building. We've spoken to earlier on a woman that described how her friend was one of those who jumped out of the 3rd floor of the building, and she had a concussion, and her husband also jumped out of the window, and he broke his leg, and as well as they had a young toddler with them. And when they were released from hospital yesterday at 6 p.m. and returned to the site, they found out at that point that they had lost their 16-year-old child, and they were here today to try and get some answers, to try and find her body. It was a long process because they also needed to take the child to the hospital, but they managed to be swabbed so that at least that process can begin. It's going to be an emotional weekend for many of those as they continue to come here into this area and try and identify the family members' remains and their mortal remains, and then also begin the funeral processes. The woman we spoke to earlier on, her family is all the way out in northern KZN. That process of returning that body and having a funeral process and those rites, also from those occupants that were in that building, some of them were foreign nationals from Malawi as well as from Tanzania, many of them of Muslim faith, and they have specific Islamic rites and burials which prescribe that someone needs to be buried within 24 hours or 72 hours maximum. And given the situation and given the circumstances, there have been NGOs that are on the ground to assist when it comes to ensuring that the burial rites that need to take place of those who are displaced. But we also spoke to some of the Malawian nationals who say that they need assistance when it comes to their embassies, and they haven't heard any kind of information from the Malawian embassy saying that they're unsure how they can get assistance. They've tried calling them. We're going to just give you a kind of shot of where we're at and what we're looking at right now. Behind us, it's quite quiet right now, but earlier on there were families. It's been an emotional day here. families inside. There's been psychosocial services and counseling brought because, for those that have been displaced, they've lost everything that they've had. It's also grief as well. Many of them still injured, succumbing to their wounds, and healing that as well. We're told that at least 20 people are still missing and being completely untraceable at the moment. So families are still trying to find their loved ones. There's another pathology van that is entering into this area. We've seen this constantly through the day, as well as hearses and burial services coming in to then transport the bodies that are identified to the homes, to the funeral homes, to allow for families to begin their processes of grief, of mourning, of then laying to rest their families. We know that counseling services have been brought here, social workers as well. This isn't to ensure that, before the families go in and try to identify, many of those burnt beyond recognition. We've been told there's some where they can only be identified, or all that's left of them is limbs. So really, getting them ready and really ensuring that they understand what is happening and what the pathology services is hoping that they can ensure does not occur. A secondary trauma of the wrong people being, given to the wrong families to be buried, which will just prolong and add unnecessary trauma to them. So really what we're seeing right now is quite an emotional day. We've seen many tear up, many emotions running, frustration as well, as many felt that they were sent from pillar to post. We traveled with a few of the family members from here who were here at about 7:55 in the morning, and then moved to Hillbrow. When they got to Hillbrow, being told that they need to come back here as well, because the process of the identification had not been yet explained to them. There is a hotline number, the Gauteng hotline, Gauteng Department of Health has set up a hotline number to ensure that those that are looking for their family members, whether they're in hospital, whether they are in the mortuary, to allow them to send through that information. People are told that they should come with the documentation, so whether it's South African national, then the original ID of the person, for those that are foreign nationals and their asylum seeker, as well as or a letter or their passport. But it's also a concern that many would not have these documentations, given that their belongings were burnt in that inferno. So these Home Affairs will be on site to also help that process. This is multi-layers of services that are needed, but also those that have been left destitute. We spoke with a woman in the community who said that she went to try and offer services, and they housed some of those who were left without anywhere to stay, many with young children under the ages of 1. So this has been a tragic incident. It's really shocked and hurt many people, and I think that it's going to have a lasting impact, and it's going to be a long, sad weekend for many families as they try piece together what happened, find their families, and start and begin the mourning process. But Liesl, we're going to continue bringing you this coverage. We know that the MEC as well as the Minister of Health will be visiting Helen Joseph at 3 o'clock, and then coming here to this site as well. I'm sure my colleague, one of my colleagues, will be on the ground at Helen Joseph to bring you that rolling coverage, and we'll continue to keep you updated as the story unfolds, and allow you to get a better picture of what took place yesterday in the inner city of Johannesburg.
Hasina, Gori, thank you. Thank you for that succinct update about the nuanced situation that's obviously transpired in the Joburg CBD. Again, as she reiterated, we will be monitoring the situation and bring you those developments, those rolling coverage as it unfolds.